Welcome everyone. Glad to see you on my channel. Today I will tell you about an unusual story, an amazing story about companionship and love. I wish you a pleasant audience.
She was sitting on a bench in front of the institute and just wanted to relax. She bought herself an ice cream and was now enjoying the beautiful weather and nature. She saw a young man walking by. He didn't seem to notice anyone around him. He just kept walking and looking at the book he was holding in his hands. Barely a minute later, he was sitting at the other end of the bench. All this time, he had not taken his eyes off his reading for a moment. "Hello," she greeted him. But the young man was so engrossed in his work that he didn't pay attention to that either. He took a notebook out of his pocket and started to draw something in it, while looking into his textbook or method book every minute. Not even a few minutes passed before he had crossed everything out, torn it out, and thrown it away. "Can I help you?" The girl came closer. "What?" He finally noticed her and raised his head. "I see you are not well. Let me see," she asked him. "No, I'll do it myself." The young man blushed. It was obvious that only now he realized that someone was looking at him. "Why don't you want to?" She didn't understand. "I have to defend myself soon. And I don't understand." He stared at his book again. "Let's see." Now she just pointed it out to him. The girl took the book from his hand. Good. He wanted to see what she would do. So she took a piece of paper and started sketching. "See, I don't want to be like everyone else. I have to have my own vision," he quickly said to her while she was already drawing on the ruler. "Look," the girl showed him what she had done. "How so?" He couldn't believe that she had summarized his thoughts on a piece of paper. "It's very simple," the girl began to show and tell. "Thank you," the young man said and stood up. "You are welcome." She looked at him and smiled. "Shall we meet tomorrow after the defense?" the man asked, realizing that they didn't even know each other. Good, she found that funny. Alexander, waiting for her answer, was ready to run. "Katie," the girl could see that he was in a hurry. "That's it, Kathy. See you here tomorrow at 4, he said as he left. "Goodbye," she looked after him. Katie noted that they were studying at the same institute, and Alexander had apparently started his internship. The girl liked studying here, not only because she knew and understood everything, but because she had her own idea of what they were doing. The girl came to the dormitory. There were no roommates, which was good. You could study in peace. Katie put her books and notebooks on the table and started to draw something. She liked to design. She thought of unusual objects. When she had her defense, a man on the committee said he remembered her name and would recommend her one day. "Oh, you're back at work." Casey came into the room. "No, I was just checking on something." Kathy turned to her. "Yes, school is out and she is still on her books." She began to change. "It's okay." I didn't want to argue with her. The girls went for a walk. It was a warm day outside and Katie didn't want to leave anything undone. She had to go home for the vacation soon, so everything had to get done. She remembered the appointment Alexander had made for her tomorrow. As she went to bed, she thought about it. "Good morning," Katie said to herself, waking up in a good mood. She went into the kitchen and put the kettle on. The neighbors hadn't been around since the evening, but that didn't matter. After morning tea with cookies, the girl washed her face, did a little work, and decided to take a little walk. Then the time would fly by. And so it did, and by 4 o'clock she was already sitting on the bench where they had met yesterday. "You're here." A guy came from behind. "Why, shouldn't I have done that?" The girl was surprised. "No, why?" He hesitated. "Just because you were so happy," she laughed, because she noticed that they didn't even greet each other, but immediately started an emotional conversation. "Sorry," he sat down next to her. "It's okay. What about the defense?" She pointed to his bag. "You have no idea." He began to tell her that tonight at home he finished her project, which she had sketched on paper. And today he told her they had all noticed the new trends. "You make it sound so interesting, like it's some kind of story." Katie looked Alexander in the face. "Let's go." He shook her hand. "Okay," she stood up. The two walked around the alleys for a while. They talked a lot. Mostly all the conversations revolved around the same topic. "You are so interesting with you," the man said to her. "And she wasn't fooling around with you. Do you want a coffee or something?" he asked. "I wouldn't say no," the girl said, a little embarrassed. although that wasn't part of her repertoire. They went to one of the cafes, where Alexander ordered them drinks. Once again, talk, talk, talk. Will we meet again? He asked a question that worried him more than the projection. I think so. What class are you in? Asked the girl. Fourth. He looked at her. Why have we never met? She rounded her eyes. Do you live in the dormitory? He guessed. Yes, she nodded. And I'm a local, he smiled. What difference does it make? Katie couldn't understand. Nothing. It's just that I come to class, mostly sit in the classroom, and then go straight home. Alexander told her how his day had gone. I see. And then what do you do in the summer? She asked herself. I haven't thought about that yet, but I'm not going out, the boy laughed. Come and visit me, she offered him. I won't refuse. He looked at the girl. She had beautiful eyes. Then I'll wait for you. She took a pen and wrote her address in a notebook for him. Well, you ruined it, Alexander smiled. It's all right. She put the empty glass on the table, got up and went to the exit. Wait, where are you going? He followed her. I have to go home. I have to pack. Tomorrow morning there was a bus that would take her to her mother. I'll take her home, he said, walking beside her. You know, as long as I've been a student here, I've never met such fanatics, Katie admitted. You mean me? Alexander guessed. Yes, and me, she laughed. They reached the hostel, said goodbye, and agreed that he would definitely come to her. I promised. I'm so interested in you. He looked after her as she walked through the door, turned, and went home. Katie was glad it had worked out that way. She had met exactly the kind of man she had dreamed of. They had common topics of conversation. They liked the same things, and most importantly, Alexander was a fan of what he did. The neighbors still weren't there. Katie assumed they had just left their things here and gone home. She packed her bag, went to do laundry, did her routine, set the alarm, and went to bed. Katie had been in a hurry since morning. She had to get everything done, but she knew she could do it. She got on the bus that was leaving, and the girl looked out the window at the passing scenery. It had been so long since she had been to her mother's. This meeting was welcome, but it was still a long way. After the bus, she had to take a train and then another bus. Mom. The girl entered her house. Daughter. Came to meet her. They stood and looked at each other. Hello. The woman and the girl hugged each other. How I missed you, they said to each other. That's it. Let's go to the table. Probably you are hungry, worried the mother. Yes. Immediately Katie presented the taste of homemade cakes. They made fragrant tea, sat down at the table, and talked for a long time. The daughter told how she studied in the northern capital, and in general, what was going on there. And the mother listened and was pleased that she already had such a mature and intelligent daughter. Well, and how about on the personal front? The mother was scurrying around the kitchen. I recently met a wonderful man, Katie said, blushing as she was embarrassed to tell her mother. What are you talking about? The woman wiped her hands with a towel and sat down across from her daughter. His name is Alexander, and he's supposed to come visit us this summer, the girl said modestly again. Wow. And where is he from? The mother asked. He's from here. He lives where he studies. Katie realized she didn't know anything about Alexander herself, and how was she supposed to find out when they had only known each other for 2 days? She told her mother. And you knew right away that he was your husband? She asked herself. You know, when we first started talking, it was like I thought to myself, Katie admitted. It is good when you have found your husband. The woman remembered how she had met her husband. After a long conversation at the table, mother and daughter went out into the garden. There was a lot to do. Don't look. I'll do everything myself. Go for a walk. Maybe you'll meet your friends. The woman didn't want to burden the girl with work. You know, I don't feel like it yet. On the contrary, she wanted to help her mother. They did something until the evening. Then they heated the sauna, steamed, and now they sat at the table and drank sweet tea with honey. It's so nice to be home, Kathy said with a sigh. Don't think about the village. You have a career ahead of you. Now you're going to marry your boyfriend. You're going to make it in the big city, and everything will be fine with you. The mother knew how much her daughter loved this place. We will see how it goes. You do not know the man yet, and you have already married us, laughed the girl. If my daughter chose him, I will like him too, the woman was sure. They talked about many things and then went to bed. Neither the girl nor her mother could sleep. Each was thinking about something else. Katie did not know how she would meet the young man, and the woman lay there dreaming that her daughter would always be fine. How great was the surprise when in the morning Katie heard a knock on the window and pulled back the curtain. Alexander was standing outside. He looked around and waited to be opened. "Hello." She came out of the gate to invite him in. Surprised, he saw the expression on his new friend's face. She nodded, and together they entered the courtyard. "And I decided what to wait for. There is nothing to do in the city in the summer, and here you have plenty of space. I will rest. If it is inconvenient to receive me at home, maybe I will live somewhere else." They went into the courtyard, and Alexander talked and talked. "Mom, we have a visitor." Katie did not listen to his nonsense. "Who?" The woman came out and stood dumbfounded. She, like her daughter, had not expected to have guests so soon. "This is the Alexander I was telling you about." The girl was amused to see the expression on her mother's face. "Oh, and I haven't finished anything yet." The woman began to gush. She didn't know what to hold on to. She felt that all of this should have been done yesterday. But how did they know he would show up so soon? "It's nothing. I just want to get some tea out of the way," Alexander said, putting his bag in the corner. There, sit down," Mama said quickly and put the kettle on the stove. "I'm going to change now," said Katie, and went into the other room. "Oh, you're Alexander. And I'm Natalie." She remembered she hadn't introduced herself to Mom yet. "Nice to meet you." The young man smiled politely. When everything was ready, all three of us sat at the table, drank herbal tea, and ate flavored cheesecake. "Did you like it?" Katie looked at him. "You know, everything seems to taste better here." He enjoyed the homemade food. "That's why I love this place. Even the air outside is different." The girl continued with breakfast. After that, the young people went outside. Katie wanted to show Alexander so much. "You know, a lot of people talk about how they went to visit their grandmother in the village in the summer or someone they wanted to visit. And I was just thinking that I've never really been to places like that. I was born in the city and I've always lived in the city. I'm used to it all. But look at the beauty here." He went for a walk and he was happy about every bush, every blade of grass that he saw. "What are you telling me? I have spent my whole life here," she laughed. Alexander could see how much Katie liked it here. She felt at home. It was still chilly. Swimming was not allowed. Katie felt sorry for that. "Well, it's not my last day here," he told her then. "Yes, I hope so too," the girl rejoiced. At home, they mostly talked about designing, blueprints, buildings, how and what. "You are so smart." Alexander looked at her. "Don't be stupid." "You are not stupid either," she really thought. At first, it was unusual to have a man living in the house, but then everyone got used to it. Alexander stayed in the village for about 2 months. He could not stay longer. He had to prepare for his studies. Katie did not want him to leave. She was used to Alexander always being there for her. When she said goodbye to him, she couldn't resist giving him a kiss on the cheek. After that, she averted her eyes and stood in front of him just like that. "Are you serious?" He reached for the spot where he had just kissed her. "Why not?" She looked into his eyes. "You and I have been together for so long. I can tell you like me. We're not small anymore." The bus had already pulled up, but Alexander was in no hurry to get on. He took her face in his hands and kissed her firmly on the lips. "Don't miss me. I'll be there soon," she told him softly. Then he got on the bus and looked out the window for a long time at the girl he was having so much fun with. When Katie got home, she already knew that she and Alexander would be together. "So, Mom, how do you like Alexander?" she asked the woman. "Oh, Oleshka, he is a wonderful choice for marriage," she told her. "Today we kissed for the first time," the girl confessed to her mother, "and I congratulate you on it. Stick to this guy and you will always be fine." Her mother wished from the bottom of her heart. The vacations came to an end and Katie also went to her studies. She continued to live in the dormitory. With Alexander, they went out. They did everything together because the studies and the tasks were almost the same. "Have you thought about where you want to work?" the young man asked her. "I don't know, maybe in a factory," she said, frowning. "I've thought about that too," he admitted. As the 5th year came to an end and the graduation defense was coming up, the boys helped each other. They listened to the defense, the presentation. Everything went well for them both. "You prepared very well," the young man said to her. You too, she replied to him. It was going to be great, he believed. It couldn't be any other way. They kissed. After graduation, we will go to your mother in the village, and I will ask her for your hand, Alexander said. I am very happy about it. She smiled at her lover. Of course, Katie did not think about it, but she knew that this was her husband whom fate had destined for her. Everyone did what the young man said. The mother, of course, agreed to give her daughter away. She believed that this was a reliable person who would never get her into trouble. The wedding was decided to play in the village as well. Neither the girl nor the boy had any friends, so they invited the closest ones. Alexander's parents also came. Everything was very cheerful and good. It was not like a wedding in the city in a restaurant. Alexander's mother offered to move in with them, but the young man didn't want that. He and Katie decided to rent an apartment. As planned by the two, they entered the factory to work as engineers. Everything appealed to them, but it wasn't exactly their specialty. They had to force themselves to do things they didn't feel like doing. The salary was also low. We had to rent an apartment and live on the money. Alexander, I have a proposal for you, Katie said to him, who always had many ideas, and with this expression, she made him curious. Why don't you tell me what you've been up to? He was always ready to listen to her. What would you think about you and me moving to the region and opening our own business there? She asked a question that had been on her mind for a long time. And what do you have in mind? He asked with interest. Design and interior design. She had already thought of everything. In some ways, you are right. The apartment will cost less. That will not stop us at first. Her husband agreed. So they did it. And in a few months, the couple lived in a small apartment and painted, drew, and did everything else. At Katie's suggestion, they began working from home. At first, she went to some construction sites, looked around, found out who was buying apartments, offered to design them. But people were so suspicious that it was better for them to go to a company than to trust a stranger. But one day, when Kathy offered her services, a couple agreed because they were happy with the price, and in a way they were also experimenters. Katie and Alexander set to work, sitting at home for days and nights drawing and designing things the way they wanted them. It was time to show the work to the clients. When they saw the project, they already liked it, and when everything was finished, their joy knew no bounds. The customers told the others and the third parties, and so word of mouth spread about the creative designer couple who had settled in the city. It was gratifying to see orders increase. Although the couple had no time to sleep, they were doing something for people. Don't you think, honey, that it's time to have a baby? Katie asked Alexander one day. You mean you're pregnant? He smiled. I can't hide anything from you. She was happy. Time passed. The task was accomplished. It was time to give birth to a child. A beautiful girl was born, whom the parents named Leslie. Now it seemed that only good things were ahead. Enough money had already been earned to rent a small building and start their own business there. Katie and Alexander didn't hesitate long and got themselves an office. Now many people knew about them, so there were no problems with orders, especially since they did not produce standard solutions, but invented new variants. They were appreciated, they were approached. When Leslie was 6 years old, her father and mother took her to the first grade. Everything was so good, nothing could dim this happiness. During the lessons, Katie suddenly became ill. She fell on her husband and then lost consciousness. Alexander called an ambulance, but figured that it was probably another pregnancy. It turned out that this was not the case. The doctor who was watching the girl came out into the corridor. Which one of you is the husband? He asked, because there were a lot of people sitting there. That's me, Alexander said and stood up. I have some very bad news for you, said the doctor. What is it? Alexander waited for the final word. Your wife has cancer, and she will not live much longer because you have not been to the doctor for a long time, and everything is already in a neglected stage, said the doctor, not feeling sorry for the man. Alexander cried at home, but tried not to show it to Katie. She did not understand what the problem was. She could see that her husband was upset about something. And then she got worse and had to go to the hospital. Alexander couldn't go there in peace. Leslie sat by her mother's bedside. It got worse every day. Not even 8 months later, the woman had passed away. This was a heavy blow from which Alexander could not recover for a long time. At first, Leslie was taken to her grandmother's, but after the summer vacations, Alexander decided to take his daughter with him after all. because she was now as badly off as he was. It was necessary. Well, I agree with you. Let her get a higher education, and then she can do what she wants. Alexander stopped to himself. Leslie learned, yes, she agreed, that she probably had something from her mother and father. She was good at inventing, at drawing. She was praised, remembering how Alexander and Katie had learned here. She was always compared to them, which also annoyed Leslie. She didn't think about her personal life, but did her own thing when she was in the dorms. When she was a third-year student, she decided that as soon as she was done with it, she would switch to a correspondence course because she was bored. And if a girl decided to do something, she would do it. But she needed her father's opinion. Why are you home? Her father came into her room. He saw the boots on the doorstep and immediately realized it was Leslie. Dad, I came to talk to you. If I study now until the vacations, can I switch to part-time so I can work and study at the same time without losing time? She asked him. You know, I don't mind. The man agreed with his daughter for the first time, and he thought that she had taken it into her head and would finally continue what they had started with her mother. Thank you, she hugged him. Probably Leslie had an unfulfilled dream from her childhood, and she wanted to fulfill it. When summer came, the girl was home. She sat for a month, a second, and on the third, Alexander could not stand it anymore, asked her when she would go to work. You have to do it now. The daughter looked at her father. And when, in 10 years, he wondered. Leslie rolled her eyes, but she had no choice. She herself offered him this opportunity. So she went to work the very next week. So that no one would say anything or judge her, Leslie became a simple professional. You are doing very well, a young girl sitting in the department told her. Oh, don't you start too. It annoyed Leslie when everyone told her she had talent. She could draw, she could design. She wanted something completely different. No, that's it. I'm not saying anything. Stepped away from her colleague. They had a big job to finish by New Year's Eve. A man was building a house, and they had to design everything in it, but in a way that no one else had. Everyone was trying. Alexander was still using his dead wife's notebook. He was taking her sketches, her drawings, adding his own, bringing in specialists, and they completed what Katie had started. What's this? Alexander threw a stack of papers on the table. My blueprints. Leslie looked up at him. It wasn't that. He showed the sketches. Dad, you do realize this is all outdated. I made it the way it's fashionable now. Yes, it's a bit fanciful, but why not? She started to argue with him. Leslie, we have such a priority. We have so many partners, so many clients. We can't let anyone down, he told her. Dad, don't you realize we need fashion now, not your outdated ideas? That evening they argued. The girl locked herself in her room, sat there for a long time, and then dialed her friend's number. Aubrey, hello, she called her. Oh, Nastya, how many years, how many winters, she rejoiced. Listen, do you feel like going out tonight? Leslie asked her. What all of a sudden? Nastya was surprised. Usually Leslie didn't let herself get carried away. She couldn't look at those drawings anymore. She wanted to do her own thing. Yeah, sure. Why are you so crazy? Aubrey asked. I'll tell you all about it later, Leslie promised. In the evening, they went to the club with their friend. The girls immediately went to the bar and ordered a cocktail. So tell me, what's going on with you? The girlfriend was interested. My father is annoying. He imposes his opinion on me. I can't say anything, Leslie said. So you studied in New York and you wanted to live there. Why did you come back? Her friend didn't understand. You know, he raised me alone. I could not leave him. Leslie always felt sorry for her father. So, do you want another cocktail? Asked Aubrey. Fine, let's do it, Leslie agreed. When they finished their drinks, they went dancing afterwards. Leslie couldn't take any more and went back to the bar, and Aubrey continued dancing. The girl ordered herself another cocktail, and then another. She realized she had had enough, but for some reason she still wanted to go out tonight. Good evening, ma'am. A young man addressed her. Hello, Leslie said to him. Why are you so beautiful and alone? He began to ask her. Who told you I was alone? Leslie began to flirt. They ordered something, had a drink, then danced. Everything was a blur. Leslie was giddy. She seemed happy. The girl woke up in the morning. She opened her eyes. Her head was like cast iron. The girl just couldn't get it off the pillow. When her eyes focused, Leslie realized that she was not in her room. "Aubrey," she said in a hoarse voice, but she heard no answer. Leslie knew she was not alone in bed because she sensed someone lying next to her. She turned around and immediately jumped out of bed. Her head immediately went blank, and she saw that they were in a small room with stripped wallpaper, a small bed with greasy sheets, and on it lay a young man, his hair dirty, himself all overgrown. "Yo, what happened last night?" Leslie quickly got dressed. She ran out of the apartment and ran home. Her father wasn't home, so she put her clothes in the washing machine and showered herself. After that, she cleaned herself up and went to work. "Where were you all night?" Dad found out she was home. "Dad, don't ask. She didn't even want to think about it." "Aubrey, hey, what happened last night?" She texted her friend. She didn't answer for a while, but then her phone beeped. "Hey, I don't remember anything," she wrote back. "You should have gone out like that," Leslie told her. Her friend didn't answer again, apparently feeling bad as well. Leslie sat at her desk all day trying to remember this guy's name, but she couldn't do it. "God, what an idiot I am." The girl inwardly felt ashamed because she was aware that there was probably something between them because she hadn't had any clothes on since that morning. She was ashamed to admit that the guy had nothing on either. Her father was starting the same company, but in a different area. Since he had to go on a business trip, Leslie volunteered. "Why so suddenly?" he asked her. "Just to get some air," she replied, and that was true. Leslie wanted to get out of this town, not see anyone, and think about everything that was going on in her life. "Okay, I trust you." Her father gave her all the necessary papers. Leslie went on a business trip. After a month in another city, the girl somehow calmed down and came back. After that, the father planned to open a few more stores. Now they had not just one company, but a real holding company of which Alexander was the head. He was very proud of it. Whenever he visited Kathy at the cemetery, he told her what was going on. 3 months had passed since the incident at the club. Katie sat at work and realized that something had been going on with her body lately. Dizziness, nausea. She wasn't stupid. She didn't ask anyone for anything. That evening, she went to the pharmacy and bought a test. In the morning, when she went to work, she took it. As she expected, it was positive. Not knowing what to do, she went to the hospital, had an ultrasound done, and everything was confirmed. She didn't want to have an abortion because she knew that if her mother was still alive, she would never approve. So Leslie decided to find the man. She remembered where she had come from then, but she was in no hurry to go there. "Aubrey," she called her friend again to ask her advice. "Hey, where have you been?" she asked, because she hadn't seen her for a while. "I had a few things to do." "Let's meet," Leslie asked her. "What's so urgent?" I could hear that the girl was busy. "There is nothing urgent anymore." The girl did not want to discuss this topic on the phone. "Then come over tonight," her friend said. "Great, I'll be at your place at 7. Leslie hung up. She kept thinking about what was happening now. Inside, everything stiffened as the girl thought of how she would tell her father. Time stretched very slowly until evening. Finally, Leslie called a cab and drove to the house where her friend lived. "What happened there?" asked Aubrey from the doorstep. She went into Leslie's kitchen. There on the table were already prepared cups. The girl sat down and waited for the hostess to pour tea. With sugar, she turned to her. "Do you remember when we were in the club?" The girl did not answer the question. "Yes," Aubrey sat down at the table. "I'm expecting a baby." Aubrey explained nothing more because she just couldn't remember. "By whom?" was a reasonable question. "I don't know. Probably from the guy I left there with," Leslie said. "My God, buddy, what are you up to? I hope you're having an abortion." Stared at her friend with wide eyes. "No," she shook her head at her guest. "What are you? Have you no brains at all?" She turned on her temple. "I want to find him and talk to him," Leslie admitted. "Yes, you are obviously out of your depth," sighed Aubrey. "I see. I came to you for advice, and now I see that you are not a good advisor," she smiled. "And what can I do if you have already decided everything by yourself? But I advise you before it is too late," the friend began to say. "That's it. I don't want to hear any more about it." Leslie got up from the table, realizing that today she had come for nothing. The next day, the girl told her father that she would be gone until noon. She herself went to the address from which she had walked home. She went to the door, knocked. No one answered. knocked again, and behind the door footsteps were heard. "Who are you?" A young man stood on the doorstep. He looked about the same as last time. "Leslie," she entered. "Leslie who? What are you doing here?" I could hear that the man was not well. "Listen, what's your name anyway?" She turned to the young man. "Anthony." He picked up a bottle of water and sipped it. "So Anthony, I'm expecting a baby from you." Leslie wanted to sit down somewhere, but everything was so dirty she didn't know where. "Haha, are you kidding me?" He turned and looked at the door as if someone was coming. "No, remember that night at the club?" She looked at him. "What night? What club? Get out. I'm seeing you for the first time." He took her hand and led her to the door. "Believe me, I don't want to have a baby with you either. But since it already happened, there's nothing you can do." She yanked her hand away. "Girl, what's your name, Leslie? If you got knocked up by someone else and now you want to dump it all on me, it won't work." He walked into the kitchen. "Let's go somewhere and talk," she asked him. "Can you buy me a beer?" He immediately perked up. Good, she couldn't stay in this doghouse any longer. When they got to the diner that was next to the house where Anthony lived, things were a little better. The guy and the girl sat down at a table. He ordered a beer. "What did you want to talk about?" he asked. "About our baby and how to move forward." She decided to order as well. "What are you talking about? Tell me in order." He took a sip. "That night we met at the club, then apparently went to your place. In the morning I woke up. You were next to me, ran away. And now I realized that this night was not just over," she said quickly. "I don't remember anything." He sipped another cool drink. "Me neither actually, just the beginning and the end." He was ashamed to admit to her. "I don't understand what you want from me." "I have nothing, not even a job," he said simply. She began to say, and then wondered what she actually wanted. "What?" He waited. His glass was already empty, but you could see that Anthony felt fine. "No, nothing, sorry," she paid, got up and went to the exit. He shrugged his shoulders, saw that the girl had left more money on the table, and ordered another drink. The girl went to work and then back home. She now spent almost all her time in her room. She only went to the office and back in the evenings. "Don't you think you're a little bloated?" That's what her father said to her when Leslie was 6 months pregnant. "You should be ashamed to say that." She wagged her finger. She didn't want him to know about her. "If it's true, who's going to tell you but me? Papa has been very nervous lately." "Papa, I have to tell you something," she said softly and lowered her eyes. She was ashamed to admit, especially who the father of her child was. "Speak." "We never had secrets." He waited, and his daughter stood there mumbling. "I'm pregnant," Leslie said softly. "What? Who is the father?" He wondered how his always decent and careful daughter could get into such a situation. "I don't know," she said with a shrug. "There is no such thing," he said, stepping close to his daughter. "Aubrey and I," she told him the story. "I never thought my daughter could do something like that. How could you embarrass me in front of the whole town?" He grabbed his head and walked up and down the kitchen. "I'm sorry, I didn't know what else to say." "Definitely an abortion." Her father stopped in front of her. "No," Leslie made startled eyes. "What do you mean no? Choose a career and a good life." Or, she realized it was an either or. "Are you giving me an ultimatum?" The daughter was shocked. "Yes, who is he? Tell me." The man was already shouting. "Some Anthony. Does not work. And not every day under the fly," she gestured. "My God," squatted the father on the couch. He understood absolutely nothing. What had he missed Leslie's education? Why had this happened? Or maybe she had done it to annoy him. "Dad," the girl was trying to talk to him. "I know I'm probably doing the wrong thing right now, but you have to go. Everyone has to be responsible for their actions. You're going to live in poverty. You're going to see how you're going to fare." He pointed with his hands to the apartment they were living in now. "You're throwing me out." The daughter was already cooking. It turns out, he got up and went to his office. Leslie didn't put up with it. She had her pride too. She went to her room, packed her things, and left the family home. When her father saw this, he was even angrier. He thought his daughter would do what he wanted. At first, Leslie wanted to go to Aubrey because she knew she wouldn't turn her away and would let her live no matter what. But at the last moment, she stopped and changed her mind. She went back to Anthony. She entered the familiar entrance, went to the door and knocked. "Hello," the man opened. He was in a good mood again. "I'm here to see you." She entered the apartment. But why? He was not as adamant today as the first time. To live, she put the bags on the floor. Okay, come in. He went into the kitchen. The glasses began to clink. Leslie went into the room. She took the bedding off the bed and carried everything into the bathroom along with the comforter. Then she poured water into a bucket and started scrubbing the floor. Even if it was unpleasant, she tried. What are you doing here? Anthony came in. I'm scrubbing the dirt, she said. Fine, do what you want. He waved off and went back inside. When the floors were mopped, she went to the closet to see what was in there. It turned out that there was clean bedding in there. She took it out and fixed it up. Then she took out a blanket and put it on the couch. You sleep on the couch tonight, she told the owner. Why not you? He looked at her. Because she turned around. All was quiet until morning. Leslie had even slept well. In the morning, she got up and got ready for work. When she got there, the security guard told her she was fired and couldn't come in, and that he had been instructed not to let her in. Oh, so that's what you did. Leslie clenched her fists. She got in her car, stopped at the store, bought some groceries, and drove back. She entered the apartment. Anthony still asleep. Then the girl went into the kitchen and started cooking there. Perhaps with the smell that now spread throughout the apartment, the owner came in. Who are you? He asked. You are what? She turned around. You again. He sat down on a stool. Here, she put a tin can in front of him, which was steamed up. Thank you very much, he rejoiced. Will you stop already? Leslie watched him drink greedily. May, he couldn't tear himself away. What are we going to do now? She sat down at the table. Let's eat first. It smells so good. I've only been eating Chinese noodles lately, he laughed. Leslie fed the guy, then went into the room and cleaned it up. She put her papers on the table and thought about what to do next. What's in that room? She pointed to the closed door. There is no one here yet. The owner has already left, the young man explained to her. I see, not only can you not live here, but it's a shared apartment. She smiled. This was not how Leslie had imagined her future life. Nothing could be done today. He could not think of anything, but Anthony slept all day. The next morning he was sober. He woke up and looked at her. Don't ask me who I am, she laughed. Yes, I remember. He stood up. And Leslie thought a strange girl came in, said she was expecting a baby, then moved out. Then the guy had gone off somewhere, and the girl knew if she raised money, she'd come back happy. She didn't have time to think about it. Soon the baby was going to be born, and it needed a lot of things. So there was nothing to sit around. She had to figure out how to come up with money. At that moment, the girl's phone rang. It was Aubrey. Hi, buddy. You know what's going on in town? People are all up in arms, and all they talk about is your family, she said quickly. What are they saying? I didn't want to know, but I was curious. That your father is greedy and threw you out of the house, and even fired from work, and about you and worse, drunk. Getting involved with a drunkard. Aubrey did not stop. Let them say what they want. It didn't matter to Leslie. They continued talking about nothing, and the girl turned off the phone. It rang again. An unknown number was on the display. Hello, Leslie assumed that someone would call now to clarify whether all the talk was true or not. Leslie, a woman's voice asked. Yes, she waited. I would like to order a design from you, said a customer. You know, Leslie wanted to confess to her. She wasn't working anymore. Yes, I know you're not with your father anymore, but I want you, she said. Okay, I'll figure something out and send you a sample, Leslie agreed. She hung up the phone and rubbed her hands together. At that moment, a photo of the woman from her house appeared on her phone. After that, the girl put aside her work and began to think of something, to make sketches, so she sat until the evening, but she did not finish anything. As Leslie had expected, Anthony came home drunk. He didn't even look at her, but just went to bed. And Leslie decided to put everything aside and pulled out something that had fascinated her all her conscious life. It was a big sketchbook, and there was a lot written on the second one. So, what story should I write today? She stroked her belly. Even as a child, when her father showed her drawings and made them, and she wanted colorful pictures and interesting stories, the girl knew what she would do. She loved writing and composing children's fairy tales and then illustrating them. That had always been her outlet. And now she decided to relax in this way. That was it. The girl sat for a very long time, Finally, she finished and admired her work. "What are you mumbling about?" She heard the voice of a young man who obviously could not sleep. "Nothing, sleep," she said. She didn't want to explain anything to anyone. Then she got up, washed her face, and went to bed. She began to get used to this room. She even liked it here. In the morning, she got up, decided to make breakfast for the young man. Then she called him, fed him. For some reason, she liked taking care of him. And then she decided to ask him to do something she had wanted to do for a long time. "Do you want to go to the hairdresser?" she asked him, because the young man's hair was really in a terrible condition. "Maybe I will," he shrugged. He didn't like being told what to do and what not to do. "Stop drinking?" she asked, but it came in a commanding tone that Leslie sensed. "Who are you to tell me that?" The guy got aggressive. It turned out she was telling him again. "Calm down." Leslie didn't know how he was in anger. That's why she kept silent. She thought he would understand what to do and what not to do because she gave him a hint. That was it. He turned away. It was obvious he was feeling bad again. "Let's go for a walk," Leslie suggested. She wanted something to distract the young man so he wouldn't reach for the bottle again. And she needed some fresh air. He just opened his mouth and realized he didn't know how to tell her what he needed. "I buy it." The girl understood what he meant. They went outside. First, they went to a barbershop. Anthony got his hair cut there. He promised to shave at home. Then they sat down in the same place as last time. Leslie had tea, the young man a beer. After that, they went to the park. There was a lot to see. "I forgot how to walk around the city like that," he said, looking around. To be honest, he couldn't even remember when he had ever walked normally. "There, you see how well I work on you," she smiled, trying to get Anthony to talk. Leslie then went with him to a cafe to have dinner because she didn't feel like cooking at home tonight. They went to the cafe that served good food and placed their order. And while getting ready, Leslie started talking again. But now it was the boy's turn before hers. "Tell me about yourself," Anthony asked her. He was curious about this girl and where she came from in his life. "What is there to tell?" And Leslie began, from the time her mother died to the time her father kicked her out and fired her. It was a little painful to talk about all that, but she persevered. "So you're a rich Pinocchio," laughed Anthony. "I don't know," she also smiled. "Don't get upset. Everything will be fine," he said optimistically, but Leslie saw that his eyes were very sad. "Aren't you going to tell me anything about yourself?" she asked him in response. "Not yet," he lowered his head to avoid looking at her. "Okay, if you change your mind, tell me," she smiled, but it was a sad smile. "Can we go home?" He looked up at her again. "Tell me, what do you think about me coming to your place and renting so brazenly?" She wanted to ask for a long time. "That's all right. It's even more fun," he grinned. They went home. It was late. The streetlights were on. It was beautiful and romantic. Leslie went for a walk, wondering if she could live with someone like Anthony. Walking in the city like this every day, admiring the view and talking about beautiful things. "Where do you get the money? You don't work anywhere." She was also very interested in this question. "So Shabashu, sometimes I have enough." He was not lying, because every day he went out, but all that he earns wasted on parties. "I see, I also have to work." They went into the entrance, and in a minute they were home. As Leslie took her place at the table and Anthony on the couch, the room was silent. Only she could be heard fiddling with her pencil on the paper. "What are you doing in there?" The man, who was almost sober today and therefore couldn't think of anything else when he heard that squeak, asked her. "Nothing. You won't be interested." She didn't want to be distracted because she couldn't concentrate for long after that. What if he looked at the girl? If she was designing a house, there was no way she could do what the clients wanted her to do. "May I see it?" he asked, already getting up from the sofa. "Sure, if you understand something." She leaned back in her chair so he could look at it. Anthony washed and was silent for a long time. Then he went into the kitchen, got a stool, and sat down next to her. He was interested in this project and wanted to understand it better. "What do they have here?" He pointed to the plan in the middle. "Kitchen. This is the bathroom," she explained, ticking off the places she had already shown. "May, I see." He pointed his finger at the drawing. "You know, you sit there looking smart, but it turns out you're distracting me. There's less and less time to finish, and it's not bad money," Leslie told him. "Wait," he took the pencil out of her hand. "What are you doing?" She could see he was trying to fix something. "Can you believe this?" He lifted his head and now looked Leslie straight in the eye. "Yes," she said, thinking she would fix it later. "See, he drew one line, then another." "Right, that's the idea. And how could I not see that for myself?" She snatched the pen away from him and now began to draw herself. Anthony continued to sit next to her. He pointed at, he said something Leslie did. It turned out that she would not do this project herself, but he would help her. And imagine, he began to fantasize. What else could be done in the house? Leslie didn't know it, but that was what her mother used to do. "Stop it," the girl laughed and cried. "Maybe we can finish tomorrow." Leslie looked at the clock hanging on the wall. It was almost 4 in the morning. Good, she thought. There is nothing left to think about today. She went to wash her face and then to bed, as she did on other days. Anthony came out of the bathroom in the morning with no vegetation on his face. Wow, Leslie froze on the doorstep, amazed at what could change in a man who had just shaved. What? He came back, looked at himself in the mirror and wondered if there was anything left. "You look good," she smiled at him. "Stop it, you're embarrassing me." He sat down at the table. They ate, and then Anthony left. Leslie didn't know where, he hadn't told her. The girl sat on the sofa for a long time still, holding the phone in her hand. She wondered whether she should call her father or not. Anthony had given her such a good idea yesterday that she realized he had a talent for it. She pushed her pride aside and dialed the number. There were long beeps. Alexander didn't pick up the phone, and when Leslie tried to reset, she heard the man answer. "Dad, hello," she said softly. "Hello, what did you want?" he said hurriedly. "Can we meet you?" asked the daughter. She wanted not only that ask to tell, but also to show him everything. Well, he probably already thought himself that he had done something bad, that he had thrown his daughter out. If he was already feared at work, then after this act, he was also considered an autocrat. People started canceling contracts, profits went down. Then tonight in our cafe, Leslie told him. It was an ordinary cafe, serving the most delicious ice cream her father used to take her to as a child. They could sit there for hours, talking and laughing. "I'm here," she raised her hand as she saw a man enter the cafe. "Hello," he came over and sat down at the table. It was obvious the man was in a bad mood. "Are you in a hurry?" the girl asked. It was important to her that she didn't distract him from anything. No, he canceled all business for the evening. He took the menu in his hand, although he knew it by heart for many years. When the order was placed and everything was in front of them, Alexander looked at his daughter. "So what did you want? What did you want to talk about?" He spooned the ice cream. Because of Anthony, she didn't make eye contact with her father, afraid he might get up and leave. "Which Anthony, the unemployed drunk?" He said it louder than necessary. Yes, she was aware that a peaceful conversation was not going to happen. "Sorry." The man saw that a lot of people here had taken notice of her and were now just sitting there staring at her. "Look," she put a plan on his table that she and the man had recently made together. "What is this?" He realized, but wanted to know why and what she was showing it to him for. "A woman called me and placed an order. I could not imagine anything in this place because it is in a typical space," she showed him. And then, you could tell he didn't want to talk, and Anthony approached and did it. She drew lines with a pencil. Now that she was doing that, Alexander got curious. He really realized that he couldn't think of much to say in this room. Yes, he has talent. The man admitted he knows something about specialists, and he immediately sees how a job is done. Maybe you will give him a chance. Leslie asked at her own risk. She knew her father didn't like being asked for other people. "You're a strange man. You've been kicked out of everything, but you've come to ask not for yourself, but for some son of a bitch." Her daughter saw him put on that smile she'd only seen as a child when she wanted to do something bad and her father told her to do it while no one was looking. That is, isn't it? She even got up from her chair. "Come back tomorrow, set up again and let him show what he can do. Now go home." Alexander also got up from his seat, went to his daughter and hugged her. "You are the best," she told him softly. "I will sleep there tonight and come back tomorrow." The father was aware of his guilt in front of his daughter and therefore said nothing more. They said goodbye, and Leslie walked happily back to Anthony's house, and the man went to his apartment alone. He knew he should have said something, but he couldn't. "Are you home?" She entered the apartment, where it was dark. No one answered her, and the girl realized that the man was gone again. It was useless to wait for him, so she did some work and went to bed. In the morning, the smell in the room was so strong that you could breathe it in and get a hangover, or so it seemed to Leslie. She got up and opened the window to get some fresh air. Then she walked over to the young man to wake him up. "Anthony, get up." She wondered how he got in so quietly at night that she couldn't hear him at all. "Get up." He rolled over to the other side, not wanting to be disturbed. "I have big news for you," she urged him on. "Now just go away." He wrinkled his nose. There was no way he was going to wake up. "Okay." She went to the kitchen to make breakfast. The girl couldn't even admit to herself that she liked him, and she did. Anthony took a shower. He came out refreshed, like half an hour ago. And he sat down at the table and stared at the girl. "I met with my father yesterday. He's expecting us today to see what you can do," the girl said. She had hoped that Anthony would be excited now, interested. And why I don't want. He didn't understand why she had come into his life in the first place and wanted to change it. "Oh, please, just go. You don't want to. You won't stay, and I'll leave you alone. Move back home," she said. "Okay." He finished his omelet and went to his room to put on something decent. Anthony was a normal kid. He lived with his mother, went to school, and ran around outside with his friends. The boy liked exact sciences, and when he got to 10th grade, he chose physics and math. "Have you decided where you want to go?" His mother often asked him that back then, always interested in what her son would do. Yes, he showed her the brochure of the institute where he wanted to study. "I think you will do well." The woman kissed him on the head. Anthony was studying. He believed he was prepared for any question. In school, he had passed everything with very good. He thought that there would be no problems in the institute. But he was wrong, because everything that was so easy, as he had dreamed, did not work out. What happened? The guy they had taken the exams with walked up to him. Anthony looked at the lists, which didn't have him on them. Oh, what a shame. It really was a shame. It was possible to go to the paid ones, but the guy didn't want to stress his mother. Anthony didn't want to go home. He was embarrassed and hurt. He went to his buddy who wasn't there yet, but he would. "Hey, are you there yet?" That was all anyone was talking about at the moment. No. He put a bottle of liquor on the table that he had bought specifically to either celebrate or drown his sorrows. "Don't do that." Austin took the bottle off the table. He didn't do it himself, and he didn't advise others to do it. "I dreamed so much, believed that everything will be fine. How can I look my mother in the eye?" Sat down on a chair and almost made the young man cry. "Listen and let's go with me." Austin did not want his friend to be upset, so he offered such an option. "Yes, this is not what I wanted." Anthony waved his hand. The guy did not understand how it was possible that his dream was forced on him. "What the hell? The main thing is education." He raised his finger and pretended to say something smart. "Okay, can I stay at your place tonight?" he asked Austin. Of course, they talked for a long time. His friend showed him the things he needed, but Anthony wasn't really interested. The next day they wrote the application, and in 3 more days they had the entrance exams. "That's it. Now we just have to wait." Austin patted him on the back. Oddly enough, Anthony was accepted there, and although he wasn't very happy about it, his mother had something to say. It was so easy that the boy envied even those who would study here. "Where have you been for so long?" Worried woman, she could not find a place. When he came, he tried to be confident and not sad. And she knew that her boy was very smart and always got what he wanted. "You know, I didn't go because there were too many people for one seat. Austin called me and I went with him to engineering." He lied a little bit. "That's good." The wife wasn't upset at all. She was proud of her son. The guy started to study. First, it was just like that, out of inertia. And then it dragged on. It got interesting. In the 3rd year, the boy thanked his friend for taking him. "I told you it would drag on." They remained friends and did a lot of things together. In practice, everyone praised the young man, which was nice. He had no idea that he could have worked somewhere else. The studies at the institute came to an end. Anthony received a diploma, which he was very happy about. He immediately started working at the place where he had done his internship. It all seemed to be there, living and enjoying, and that's exactly what he did. Anthony, one of his colleagues, called him from the hospital. He rose from his seat. "Hello," he was very worried. "Your mother is in the hospital. You must come right away," said a man's voice. The young man excused himself and hurried to the local ward. When he arrived at the ward, his mother was lying on the bed. "What is wrong with her?" he asked the doctor. "A stroke," he replied. How could this happen? Why was he very worried? The woman had passed away after only 2 years. Anthony suffered a lot. In the evening, he sat in a cafe and poured out his sorrow. "Young man, is something wrong?" A pretty girl came up to him. "Yes, my mother died," he told her. "Oh, maybe we can talk to make it easier?" She sat down next to him. "Okay," he nodded. "My name is Selena," she introduced herself. "And I'm Anthony," he answered her. That night they talked for a long time. The guy even stopped drinking. He was so interested in her. Then they exchanged phones. Anthony called a cab and went home. The next day, Selena called herself and offered to meet. She didn't want to leave a handsome young man alone in such a situation. "Shall we go for a walk?" she called him. Anthony himself did not notice how he was distracted from his sorrow. He smiled. Things began to improve. "Selena, let's be friends," he told her a month later. "What are we doing?" She laughed back. "No, seriously," he hugged her. Okay, she liked him at first sight, and she didn't walk away from him. First a few months of friendship, and then she moved in with him. "I want you to be my wife," he knelt down in front of her that very night. I agreed. They laughed again. Then the wedding took place, where many friends and relatives came. Everyone celebrated and had fun. After that, Anthony and Selena began to lead adult, serious lives. He worked, brought home a good income, but Anthony had a minus. After work, they could meet with friends. Selena hated this and told her husband about it. "What are you, Selena?" He looked at her in the evening with puzzled eyes. "Nothing." It offended the girl that he spent the evening with someone else and not with her. No offense, he went to bed. Anthony had money, and not bad. One of his friends told him about investments and other virtual currencies. He started investing without big profits. For Anthony, it was like a game. But sometimes it shot up, so you could withdraw a decent amount. "Selenka, we are going on vacation," he told his wife at home. "I'm glad." She hugged her husband, loved him for arranging such surprises for her. Then from the vacation they came back. The girl did not know it yet, but she was pregnant. And when it became known, the joy of both parents knew no bounds. Now Anthony tried not to go out with friends to spend more time with his wife. She just smiled. "How are you doing?" Anthony kept asking his wife. "Everything is fine," she kept answering. "And how are you?" He often laid down next to Selena and stroked her belly. I don't know, some unusual sensation that she couldn't explain. Labor started suddenly, but the couple was prepared for it. Anthony quickly called a friend, who had also been warned. They had reached the maternity hospital, and now the friends were sitting in the car under the windows where Selena had given birth. "Who?" he shouted already in the morning. "Young man, what are you yelling about? You are scaring all the women in labor," the nurse said to him. "I can no longer sit here ignorant," he said excitedly. "You have a son," she rejoiced with him. "I love you," he kissed the nurse. "What are you doing?" She noticed that the new father was very happy. "Selena, thank you for your son," he cried out loud again. And then he knew that his wife would spend a few more days in the maternity hospital, so he had time to celebrate the birth of the heir. All day and until midnight, he and his friends frolicked at the restaurant. After that, Anthony slept in and then went to see his wife. Robert took the small package in his hands. "I love you," his wife kissed him. "And I love you. You have no idea how." They got into the car and drove home. Now Selena was home with the baby. Anthony was working. He was bringing in enough. "You know, I want to buy a car," the man said to his wife one evening. "I do not mind. It would be easier to move around." She almost always agreed with her husband. So Anthony took a friend with him and they went to buy a car. Now the family had everything they could dream of. If they had to go to the hospital or anywhere else, Anthony was always there. He loved his wife and child and would do anything for them. They were alive. Robert was growing up. He was 1.5 years old when they were ready to put him in kindergarten. It was so exciting, Selena said, when his parents took him there for the first time. It was a rare occasion that her husband invited the family to go to the country house with friends. It couldn't hurt to relax, Selena rejoiced. They drove off in their car. There were a lot of people from out of town who had been invited here today. "Anthony, why are you drinking? We have a long drive back," Selena said to him quietly. "It's okay, I'll drink a little too," her husband replied. In the evening, when they all drove home, Robert was already asleep. They got into the car. Selena was very excited, sitting in the back seat with her son. They drove off and exchanged their impressions. When they got on the highway, at first everything was fine. Then Anthony saw a big car driving strangely, as if it was skidding. "Hang on," he saw it coming toward them. Then a bang, darkness. Anthony opened his eyes. He was very dizzy. Everything was white. "Where am I?" he said in a very hoarse voice, thirsty. When he lay down, he saw a girl in a white robe. "Where are my wife and child?" He realized that he was in a hospital. "The doctor will come and explain everything to you," said the same girl. When the doctor entered the room, Anthony looked at him, waiting for what he would say. "I'm sorry, but your wife and son," he fell silent. "No, it can't be," Anthony began, trying to stand up. "Calm down, you can't bring them back and you need to rest," the doctor tried to reassure him. "No, it's all my fault," the young man cried. He had been here for a while, and after he was discharged, he came home. He didn't want to be here anymore and put the apartment up for sale. The husband visited his wife and son at the cemetery, and he sat there most of the day, crying and apologizing. After the apartment was sold, he put all the money into investments. He wanted nothing more, only to die. Anthony dropped everything and moved to another city where he now lived. His aunt lived here in a shared apartment. She had died a long time ago and left a room for him and his mother, and that's where he moved in. Who his neighbor was, he never saw. From then on, Anthony just drank. He wanted to kill himself that way. "Now you know all about me." Anthony looked up at Leslie. "Yeah, you've been through a lot," she sighed. She had no idea fate could be like this. They packed their things and drove to the place where Alexander had been waiting for them for a long time. Now finally, he stood to receive them as the young men entered his office. Anthony held out his hand to the boy. Alexander shook the leaders. After that, they went somewhere, the man asked, pointing, waiting for an answer from Anthony. "And?" The young man left, and Leslie stayed with her father. "Yes, he is a very smart specialist. Why does he behave like this? Just live his life." "Could not understand it, Alexander. That's why I brought him to you." She did not want to tell him the story of the guy now. "Okay, I will give him a chance." He did not look at his daughter. "Thank you." She went over to him. After that, the man and the girl went home and talked a lot about how and what can bring a person into such a situation. "Are you going to live with him?" the man asked his daughter. "I don't know yet, but probably yes," she admitted. "Oh, daughter, and why did this have to happen to us of all people?" He shook his head. The next day, Anthony didn't show up. "Hello," Leslie called him. Yes, she heard him talking badly again. "Did you have a successful meeting yesterday?" she asked sternly. "No, just slept." He didn't lie. "Then come over, your father is waiting for you," the girl asked. Really? He couldn't believe that anyone else believed in him. That's right, Leslie herself didn't believe that anything could come of this man she had seen for the first time. He arrived, work began. Everyone in town started whispering again. They said Alexander had taken Leslie back and gotten drunk with her. The women whispered. And she was pregnant, others said. The town stirred up another wave of gossip, but no one paid any attention. Even at work, the word was that Anthony had been hired because he was dating Leslie. Alexander had originally put the boy on the street, but when he started showing and explaining to other specialists how and what to do, he believed in him. Leslie, one day a father called his daughter. What, she came to him. "Why don't we talk a lot? Bring Anthony to visit," he asked her. Okay, she was glad. They really had hardly spoken to each other lately. Only on the condition that he not drink. His father looked at the bar. "Okay, I'll warn him," the girl sighed. She didn't bother to sit back down in the company. She told her father that she could work from home if he needed her. In the meantime, she would do her own thing. "What is it about having your own? You've been talking about it for so many years," he asked her. "I thought you would never ask," She brought him texts and pictures. Alexander stared ahead and began to read. Leslie sat down next to him and waited to hear what her father would say. It's very interesting. He looked at his daughter. And I'll tell you what, I've been doing this since I was a kid, and you keep throwing clubs between my legs like she's blaming him. I take it all back. He was now ashamed in front of his daughter. The next day, when Anthony came to work, Leslie was already waiting for him. "Hello, how are you?" She came up to him. "What are you doing here?" He was surprised. "I came to see you." She looked at him and realized that she was not wrong in her decision, even if she did not know it at the time. "Why? Everyone is talking about us." He looked around. "Let them talk. What do you care?" She didn't want to pay attention to people. "Tell me what you want to say." He was in a hurry. "Dad invites you to visit him today," she told him, and she came very close to him. "Okay, I'm coming." The young man realized that he worked for this man, but also that his daughter was pregnant by him. "That's it. Then I'll wait." She sent the man an air kiss and headed for the exit. That evening, Leslie cooked in the kitchen. No one was home. She hummed a few songs to herself. It felt good. Her father came home from work first, and an hour later Anthony came in. You could see how excited he was. "Hello," he said, looking at Leslie. "Come in." She suddenly blushed. Everyone sat down at the table, and for the first 15 minutes they were silent. "What now? Are we going to play silence?" Leslie was the first to break the silence. "No, Anthony, tell me something." Alexander looked at the future son-in-law as he thought. "I don't even know." He turned to the girl. "Dad, you'd better tell me how things work, how companies work in other cities." Shifted the conversation from Anthony's daughter. "Yeah, it's all good. I think if it was bad, I would have said that already." He looked and smiled. "Okay." Everyone sat around like they didn't know what to talk about. Well, enough of sitting around being shy. Alexander got up and went to the kitchen. He brought water that was not on the table. "Why be shy?" Leslie didn't understand. "When are you going to apply?" He asked Anthony directly. "We never thought about it," Anthony said with a shrug. "What do you mean? She already has a belly on her nose." And they didn't think about it. The man began to lose his composure. "Daddy, why are you pushing him?" Leslie interfered in the conversation. "And you keep your mouth shut," he reprimanded her. Leslie was silent. She looked at Anthony and realized how much pressure he was under. "Okay, let's at least go on a date," Anthony suggested. "Great. How are you?" He turned to Leslie. "Good." She blushed again. "They're going to date." They've lived in the same apartment for so long, and now they're going out, Dad muttered to himself. "Let's wait until the baby is born, and then Anthony and I will talk and make a decision." Leslie had her own version of events as usual. "Well, do what you want." He saw that there was really something between the young people. "Come on." After dinner, Leslie stood up and extended her hand to Anthony. Good. He still didn't know how to act towards a man. They walked outside, both in silence. "What do you say?" Leslie began. Sooner or later they had to talk about it. "What can I say? He made a child. He should be responsible. He talked like a robot." "What do you mean you have to do it?" The girl was offended that the young man wanted to marry her just for the child. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean it." He immediately began to justify himself. "No, it's all right." She went and sat down on the bench that was there. "Leslie, you have to understand, you and I met a long time ago and made this baby, but we don't know each other at all." He sat down next to her. "You better go home." She turned to him. Leslie didn't understand why she always blushed. It was the third time it happened in one evening. "No, I'm interested in talking to you, and if you don't want to sleep, I'm willing to stay here a little longer," he admitted. "I feel good with you two." She leaned back. They were silent, but this silence was extraordinary. "Maybe you'd like to move here?" Leslie suggested. "What? Then they must be thinking." He fell silent. "And if we get married, will we live in your shared apartment?" she asked. "Don't start." He was embarrassed. Earlier, when he was getting his grief off his chest, he barely understood. But now that his brain is completely sobered up, he feels uncomfortable. "All right, come on, I'll walk you out a bit." The girl got up from the bench. From now on, they met every day, talked not only about personal issues, but also about work. The young man was very competent in this respect. One evening, as they sat together looking at the girl's drawings, she had a tingle in her stomach. "Oh," she looked at him with fearful eyes. "What?" Anthony tensed up. I think she couldn't finish her sentence and collapsed. I'm going to call an ambulance now. He pulled out the cell phone. Dad's car keys are in there. She pointed to a shelf in the hallway. No, I'm not driving. The young man turned white. We have to hurry. She squeezed the words out of her. All right, on cotton balls, he ran to get the bundle. Then Anthony helped Leslie outside. He got behind the wheel. Start the engine. What are you waiting for? She couldn't sit up anymore and laid down in the back seat. Anthony was having deja vu. They're out of town. The girl is in the back seat. They're driving out onto the highway. Here he starts to shiver, but all he can think about is getting the girl to the hospital. Leslie was lying on the seat. She was breathing loudly, moaning and sighing. When she straightened up to see where they were going, she saw that the young man's cauldrons were white, so tightly had he gripped the steering wheel. When Anthony stopped, she relaxed a little as she saw the hospital building ahead. Good, she breathed out. Then it was just as quick. Leslie was put on a gurney and pushed into the delivery room, and Anthony stayed in the car. It was just like it was then. He couldn't believe it. The man realized he couldn't drive back, so he parked the car here and walked into the clinic. A young man, a woman came up to him. My wife is in labor. Can I wait here? He asked her. What do you think? Is this a 5-minute job? She smiled. What is there to do? He looked at her. I don't know. You can go home or wait. No one will mind. She nodded at him. Then Anthony decided to call Alexander to tell them what was going on. Leslie is in labor. He realized he might be distracted, so he spoke quickly. And where are you? The father asked immediately. Anthony told him everything. He was at the hospital in an hour. And how are you? It was obvious that his father was also worried. His hands were shaking and he stuttered a little. I did not know yet, he was honest. I had the same condition. The future grandfather sat down on the couch. Leslie was very bad. She thought she was going to suffocate. There were nurses and doctors. They put some apparatus on, but that didn't relieve the pain of the contractions. Why does it hurt so much? She felt like her pelvis was going to break. Just be patient, they reassured her. I can't do that. She knows it can't be avoided, but when she cries, she feels better. Finally, it started. It hurt, but it had been going on so long that the pain had just dulled. The doctor said something. Leslie could hear them as if through absorbent cotton, but she tried to do what they said, and then she felt some relief. It was like the pain was dulled. Leslie, congratulations. The girl felt something being placed on her chest. She lowered her eyes and saw her miracle. It was a girl. Katie, Leslie said, swooning. Everyone started to get excited quickly. Everything seemed to have gone well, but as it turned out, the patient was not well. The child was put in a special box. The mother was transferred to the intensive care unit. It had to be determined whether this fainting happened because of helplessness or if something else had happened. The child was completely healthy, but the mother had some kind of infection. The fever is high, so the paramedics are doing everything they can. You said your wife was in labor, Leslie? The same woman turned to Anthony. Yes, he nodded and scolded his father for calling the girl his wife. They have a daughter, but the mother is not well, she said. What's wrong with her? The father jumped up from his seat. Who are you? She was surprised and frightened. Father, he was even more nervous. Whose? The woman did not understand at first. Nastin, he was already panicking. It's all right, the doctors are with her now, the woman murmured. The men had spent the whole night here today. In the morning, they were told that the young mother has already normalized. She was transferred to the intensive care unit, and in the evening, she will already be in a normal ward. If possible, the baby can be taken away after 24 hours, but we will leave the mother here for now, the doctor said to Alexander and Anthony. Good, they said in a low voice. Katie was in her father's arms, and Anthony couldn't believe he was holding his baby. Okay, you're coming with me, Alexander ordered. Well, I didn't expect it any other way. The man got behind the wheel himself, and the young man couldn't get enough of the sleeping child. Now he realized that he had to do everything for his girls. God, let everything be all right, Alexander pleaded. Leslie is strong. She will pull through, Anthony assured him. I know that. I used to feel the same way about my wife, but you see how everything turned out. The man almost cried. When they arrived home, the nursery and everything the baby needed were ready. Anthony fed Katie and put her to bed. "Well, how is she?" the father asked. "She's fine, asleep." He put his finger to his lips. "Where are you going?" The man did not understand when he saw the young man putting on his shoes. "I'm going to Leslie's," he said and walked out the door. Now the man was not afraid of anything. He again took the car of the girl's father and drove to her apartment. "You can't go in there," the woman stopped him. "But I have to. She needs my support," Anthony said. "I will be punished." She looked at him. "It is night. No one is here, please," he begged her. "Okay." She looked around and opened the door. "Leslie, hello." He entered the room. "Hello." She was very weak, she said. "Will you marry me?" He handed her the ring. "I found the time," Leslie said in a different way. "Is that a yes or a no?" He couldn't understand. Of course it was. She couldn't get up, so Anthony put his arm around her. "I need you," she said softly. "I'll always be there for you," he whispered in her ear and left the room, for the woman was already beckoning him to pack up. He wandered under the windows of the hospital a bit more and then headed back to the house where his bride-to-be lived. Of course, he didn't want to do that, but his daughter was there. All is well. He entered the house. "How is she?" The father was worried. "She will be home soon." He went to Anthony's nursery. Katie slept. The young father looked at her and kept an eye on her. When she woke up, he changed her, fed her, and held the girl in his arms until morning. "I'm going to work. You're home," Alexander said in the morning. "What about my work?" Anthony did not understand him. "You're going on vacation," said the boss in a proper tone. Good. Anthony was glad that he did not have to leave the girl. He had been with Katie all day. In the evening, Alexander came. He said he would move Anthony and he had to be at the hospital. Leslie was doing much better now. The doctor said they would release her home in the morning. "That's great news," Anthony rejoiced. He was back to where his blood child was. "You did well," his father praised him. "Thank you." Anthony felt how tired he had been the last few days. "Go to sleep." Alexander saw everything too. Anthony was glad of it. He went and lay down on the sofa. 3 hours later, he was back on his feet. He realized that the man had to work tomorrow. He had to let him rest too. Katie really came back in the morning. She called her father. He picked her up from the hospital. How worried we were. The men she loved told her. "Thank you for everything." She walked over to the crib and took her daughter in her arms. "Okay, we need to decide on a wedding date," Dad told his daughter. "Wait, there's no rush," she interrupted him. "How could there be? You have a child. You love each other. Why not?" He didn't understand. "I need to come around a bit." Leslie looked at him and her father understood. Now Anthony wanted to go home, but no one would let him go. So he stayed here. The young man would let the girl rest. He would get up at night to see his daughter. "I didn't know you were so caring," Leslie said to him. At that moment, Anthony leaned over and kissed her. It was her first conscious kiss. "Because I love you," he told her. His vacation was quickly coming to an end. He had to go to work. Everything went well. There were no more mishaps. Anthony and Leslie began to prepare for the wedding. She called Aubrey and told her everything. "And I think we're disappeared," laughed into the phone girl. "Will you help me pick out a dress?" Leslie asked her. Of course, she was ready for anything. The girls came to the salon, did not choose long. The future bride immediately liked one thing. She bought it. "You have such a story. I really want to hear it," asked friend Leslie. "Okay, let's go for coffee," Leslie agreed, while Katie slept in the stroller. "Come on, tell me the story," Aubrey urged her friend. Then Leslie told her everything, letting it all out a bit, information that wasn't that important. "Wow, usually in the movies they show a poor girl meeting a prince, and with you it's all backwards," Aubrey sighed. "So are you ready to be a bridesmaid?" the girl asked. "Of course you are," her friend made big eyes. Leslie came home happy. No one was there yet, and she decided to cook a feast. Leslie spent the whole day in the kitchen. Only for a few moments she took time for her daughter. When Alexander and Anthony returned in the evening, they were very surprised to see the table that the girl had set. "Wow," the father clapped his hands. "Just the right occasion." "What is the occasion?" Looked at his daughter. "We will tell you all about it." He winked at Anthony. They all sat down at the table, the stroller with the baby in it. "So, Leslie, since you decided to get married, I decided to give your husband a gift. He is now my official partner, said Alexander. I told him I didn't need anything. The young man looked at her. I congratulate you. She thanked her father for giving Anthony such a chance. I also have some pretty good news, the groom-to-be said enigmatically. And what is this news? The girl tensed up. Remember I told you that when I had grief, I sold everything and invested in virtual stocks, he reminded her. Yeah, so. She didn't know what he was getting at. I want to tell you that we are rich. He turned the screen of his phone toward her. Wow, she saw how much money was on there now. I promise you, we will have our own house and I will never leave you and Katie. He took her hand and kissed it. What's wrong with this house? Father didn't understand. You're still young yourself. You'll meet a woman. You'll have a family of your own. Anthony turned to him. What kind of women? The man waved his hand. You know, I was ready to die too. And then your daughter appeared on the horizon. He looked lovingly at Leslie. Well, it will be seen. You are so long behind with the wedding. I'd rather grow old than you go to the registry office, laughed Alexander. We will do everything, promised his daughter. Now the family lived harmoniously. When the city learned that Anthony had moved into the house of his future father-in-law, there was again a wave of rumors that only made things worse. What did these people want? Alexander sometimes asked. It's payback for popularity, Leslie laughed back at him. The wedding was big. Almost all the employees were invited. Anthony and Leslie sat at the head of the table, and next to them was a baby carriage. Happiness, the guests shouted. Everyone was happy. Alexander, may I ask you to dance? One of the female employees came up to him. Of course, he shook her hand. Look, who is your father with? Showed a nod of the groom's head. That's the head of human resources, Leslie smiled. There you go, and I told you there would be no wife, smiled Anthony. All evening Betty danced with Alexander. If at first she asked him herself, then he already came up to her. Guys, I think you were right, he turned to Anthony. We had a very nice vacation. We came home very late. Katie was lying quietly in her stroller. Way to go, baby. Let her parents do the right thing. Took her mother in his arms. After that, everyone went to bed. And within a month, everything was ready to start building the house. Anthony was now spending more and more time at the construction site. He liked the way things were going. He and his wife had planned everything together. We're having guests over tonight, Leslie's father called. A guest, I suppose, she said enigmatically. You're right, the girl imagined Daddy blushing now. She cooked dinner, set the table, and waited again for the guests. Hello. Come in. She opened the door and greeted Betty. Oh, Leslie, she came in. Alexander was embarrassed, but acted normally. Later, Anthony came home. He went to the construction site every evening after work. How are you guys doing? Leslie sat down across from the couple. Everything is fine, blushed the two already quite grown men. They spent the evening very cordially. Leslie thought the woman should come visit them more often. Ta agreed, because she had liked the man for a long time. If she hadn't had the courage then, we would still be walking alone, Betty said. You're a good girl, Leslie remembered when she found Anthony alone. Her family was doing well too, with Katie growing up and the house nearing completion. That's it, Daddy. You can officially propose to Betty. We're moving in soon, Leslie announced to him one day. Would you be okay with that? He looked at his girl. Why should I mind? She didn't understand. Well, I thought, I'll find someone else to cheat on your mother. He turned away. What are you saying? She laughed and hugged him. After that, the renovations were finished and the young people got ready to move. Betty was a great support to Leslie and her daughter. When no one else had time, she always took care of her granddaughter. Would you like me to read you a story? Leslie asked the woman one day. Of course, I've loved fairy tales since I was a child, she agreed. Leslie began to read, and at the end of one story, Betty even cried. What did you think? Wanted to hear the woman's feedback. Who is the author of these wonderful lines? Asked the listener. This is my creation, admitted the girl. What are you saying, and why is everything on the table? The woman did not understand. The woman decided that she would do everything for Leslie. She took everything the girl had and brought it to the newsroom. After a while, Leslie's stories could be seen on the store shelves. Thank you. I probably wouldn't have dared to do that, she hugged the woman. I'd like a signed copy, she laughed back. No problem. The girl immediately took the book and signed it. When the young people moved in and Betty moved in with Alexander, they visited each other all the time. "Daddy, come over tonight," his daughter called him. That day was Katie's 1-year anniversary. Her mother was going to have a party for her. Everyone was there. It was nice. "You know, I've always wanted to say that." The father looked at his daughter. "Say it already," she smiled. "Imagine, and if you had listened to me then," he almost cried, "and had an abortion." "Believe me, I would not have." She went and hugged the man. "I feel like a traitor holding Katie in my arms," Dad admitted. Anthony looked at it all and was amazed. "Leslie knows my story, knows how hard it was for me and where I wanted to go. And now I think my first wife sent me to you. Of course, I never believed in mysticism, but now I just think about it," confessed the young man. "I love you," his wife kissed him. And then they began to organize my father's wedding. It was a pleasant experience. Although Betty did not want to make a fuss and hold a banquet, the young people insisted. "Well, shall we go and get the dress?" Leslie said, pleased to see what kind of family they now had. "Baby, come on, I'm old. I don't know what a dress is," said Betty, turning as red as a crab. "I don't want to hear anything. Everything has to be real," the girl answered her. Before signing in, they all walked together to the cemetery to Leslie's mother. Alexander hugged the monument. "You are not angry with me," he said to the pictures of his first wife. "Daddy, she wishes you nothing but happiness," his daughter came up to him. After that, they all went and did everything as it should be done. The party was once again a success. Everyone was happy. "I don't know why I deserve such happiness." Anthony hugged his wife and daughter. "Do you remember how it all started?" She looked at him. "No," he laughed back, "and you know it too." "What's true is true," she giggled too. Little Katie was among the guests. She didn't understand much, but she was enjoying herself here too. Everyone in the small town was shocked at what was going on in this family.